This is just our intro. Just spoilers alert for the following content.
Yes, we are rusty. We have not recorded in a long time, so we did not put a spoiler disclaimer. So this is what you're getting now. If you have not seen Rogue One, don't listen anymore.
Thanks. Welcome to our... Oh man, what episode is this? Some episode number podcast. Actually, let's just not number them anymore. We'll just... It's a whatever podcast. This is like a sort of a... Not even a one-off. This is our podcast on Star Wars... Sorry, Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
Yes.
Man, this is just terrible entry.
That's okay. It's our media podcast, and we're going to be doing a movie this week. We're breaking radio silence with Rogue One, so we're coming back in a big way with a big movie to talk about. Pretty ensemble cast. A lot of them are either unknown or they're kind of like really famous in their like respective, countries, places that they come from. And there's also some surprise characters that come back. Well, not surprises. If you've seen the trailers, you know Darth Vader's in it. But there's other cool little gems. Anyways.
So, this movie was released 2 weeks ago, and it's sort of the in-between story in between episodes number 3 and 4. The original saga was actually episodes 1, 2, and 3, but that was changed to 4. So, after the prequels were made, there was a gap in between Episodes 3, Revenge of the Sith, and Episode 4, A New Hope. So this is sort of the filler in between to explain how Luke Skywalker got a part of it and where Princess Leia is going with the plans and how they got the plans, really.
Yeah, and surprisingly, the amount of time between Episode 3 and this movie is a lot bigger than you would think. It actually starts basically like a few minutes even, you could say, right before Episode 4. Like, if you were to watch this movie... you pop in A New Hope right after, it would feel like that was just, like Rogue One was just one big kind of prologue to A New Hope. Exactly. So it actually takes place closer to what's going on in A New Hope. By the beginning of this movie, the Empire's already, like, established. Like, it's reigning the galaxy.
Well established, yeah.
Yeah, and the rebels are already, like, on Yavin 4, so, like...
And at the end of Episode 3, it's like they just started. So there could actually be even more stories within this time period.
Yeah.
Okay, so we haven't done one of these in a while. But we're not going to go with the same sort of format as we did before. So, well, I guess kind of we are. So we didn't really write down that many points, but what were your like main things you didn't like about the movie? Because I know there's a lot of things to like about the movie.
Yeah, I'm going to start with my cons right out the gate because really I don't have much that wrong with this movie other than just a few nitpicks. I think the one that comes to mind, because I've seen this movie twice now, and one of the things that I think sort of just always sticks out to me as something that doesn't need to be there and is just so out of place is that weird tentacle monster that's hanging out with Saw Gerrera and the rebels in their Jeddah hideout. I don't think the monster looked really convincing at all. Like, it was definitely done with mostly CG. And I think it was just a weird plot convenience. Like, they obviously needed to authenticate the pilot's story somehow. So they introduced this weird blind, like, tentacle porn thing. Like, what the hell? Like, I don't know. I feel like they could have just tortured the pilot, or they could have beat him, or they could have, like, blackmailed him somehow, and they could have, tested his allegiance that way. I don't know why they needed to introduce this weird creature. Like, no one's going to be climbing for a spin-off about these weird monsters. They're just kind of, I don't know. Yeah. Felt really out of place to me. Also, I think that... as much as I obviously like Forrest Whitaker, and it's cool that they brought in Clone Wars with Saw Gerrera, and they really recognize that that's part of the canon, I felt that whole kind of first third of the movie was really distracting. I think that Saw Gerrera actually detracted from the story, and once they pass his piece, that's when the movie picks up for me. Like, that's where the story is. I feel like that was kind of a big distraction. They didn't really have much for him to do. He kind of dies really abruptly, and he doesn't really move the plot forward. If anything, he kind of is just there as a means of introducing Jyn and some of the other rebels. But obviously it's Forrest Whitaker, so you're getting exactly what you expect with him.
I thought he was actually really important, because that sort of like connects him to her father. And without that, there was like no need for her to go to the rebels at all, and then they would never connect.
Yeah.
You could, so I would like argue, like you could argue that Saw Gerrera is important, but yeah, it could have been done by something like literally anybody.
Yeah, I guess also if he was going to be in there, he could have had more to do. Like, they didn't have to stop at Jeddah with him. Like, I feel like he even could have carried on doing the main adventure with them. Like, he could have been one of the, like, squad, like that eventually ends up on Scarif stealing the plans. I think that's probably my main disappointment with him, is that he was in this movie, they got such like an A-list actor to play him, and they took all that effort to like make him Saw Gerrera from the Clone Wars. Why didn't they have him stick around a little bit longer? I guess that's why it feels so arbitrary to me, but you're right. It's not like Galen or whoever knew to send the plans to Jin. Like,
yeah, he had no idea where Jin was.
True. Yeah, I could see why. I guess it just kind of, at that point in the movie, everything's moving so slowly, but once they get off Jeddah, the movie really picks up, and that's really where the meat of the story is. And that's my only other real complaint, is that I just think that the first act was a little slow. To be fair, they had 6 or something main characters to introduce, and then of course they had to put everyone where they needed to be for the big finale. But other than that, those 3 things are really all I have to say that are negative in any way. What about you? What were some of the things?
So the main thing I didn't really like about this movie was the directing style. The directing style was different. It was more of a Star Trek. It felt like more Justin Lin. And even though the prequels are like hated on, at least they stayed relatively true to how the other ones were shot, even though it was well, it's like sort of how it's the same. What I really didn't like was how each planet was introduced with the title and then who occupies it, even though that does help. But they also repeat it in the dialogue. They're like, oh, we're on Jeddah, Imperial owned. And then and then it's like, and then in the there's like a description, Jeddah, Imperial owned, but then when they get to the planet, you see that it's Imperial owned, and you're on. They reference the planet many times, and that happens again and again for the different planets that they travel to. So I didn't really like that. I would also agree with the tentacle monster. I didn't like what's up with that.
Like, just why? It was such a sidestep.
Yeah, but like that was the main thing. So just like the directing style was something I didn't like, but I did like how there was new characters introduced to a lot of new areas. Mustafar was like which came back. That was cool. But there's a lot more pros. So what did you like about it, Mason?
So I don't know what to say that's already been said about this, but Darth Vader in the movie is fantastic. He's not in the movie very much. I think he has 3 scenes, 2 of which are kind of dialogue driven, and then he has an action sequence. And I know the movie's been out for a while, but I almost don't want to talk about it because seeing it for the first time with no background is so like amazing. Like, that one action scene really gives you an idea of why he's like the most feared enforcer for the Empire. In the original trilogy, you really only see him fight Luke Skywalker. You don't really see him fighting like plebes or like other like strong people. So you don't really get a sense in the original trilogy of how powerful he actually is. But with this 2 or 3 minute sequence that he gets at the very end of the movie, it like emphasizes why he's such a feared person across the galaxy.
Well, also in the comic books, but also even in Clone Wars Rebels, you see Darth Vader. It's initially right after Episode 3. He's hunting down the rest of the Jedi. Like Order 66 didn't just eliminate every Jedi. There's still Jedi scattered throughout the galaxy. So his mission is to go out and kill every single one. So he's, in the comic books and in Rebels, he's a lot more menacing. And you can really see that. And then this is like the continuation of that. And like you said, like in Episode 4, he seems like labored in his movements and he doesn't seem as powerful, but he's actually incredibly powerful. And he has all these cool, I hope they do another like Star Wars story movie where it's Darth Vader's sort of like adventures. But he has some really cool moments. At least in the comics. Even in Rebels, he also has his own like assassin team. Yeah. Like Revan did. So that would be really nice to see.
Yeah, it was nice that finally like sort of the mainstream viewers who just watch the live action movies could see a Darth Vader that could like be that powerful and be that exciting.
And so menacing because it's like the lightsaber ignites and you're just like, oh shit, it's going down.
Yeah, if there's one scene, if there's like the scene in the movie, it's that one, the one that gets people like talking the most. Mm-hmm. Also, another character has done really good justice in this movie, and it's Grand Moff Tarkin, who they kind of bring back to life with CGI, because unfortunately the actor had passed away long before Rogue One was even in development. But in the original trilogy, you don't really see why Tarkin is the person who gives Darth Vader orders. If you look at the original trilogy, there's only 2 people that give Darth Vader orders and boss him around, and it's the Emperor and Grand Moff Tarkin. So Grand Moff Tarkin then is a really important character who has sway over Darth Vader. And in the original trilogy, you don't see too much of him. He his character arc is wrapped up really quickly. But in this movie, you see him like maneuver himself politically in the Empire and betraying the villain in this movie, Krennic, to put him, Tarkin, in charge of the Death Star. So he's like this cold, menacing, like he's always got a plan, he's willing to stab you in the back, like cheat to win kind of guy. So I like that we got to see him in the movie do that. And it also explains why he, of course, is the commander of the Death Star in A New Hope, as opposed to this character that they introduce, Krennic, in this movie. I also didn't like, or no, I did like rather, how it didn't end on a happy note, this movie. It really could have been all like nice, tied up with a bow at the end, and they all could have escaped. But obviously we don't see them in the original trilogy, so where are they? That would have been another thing that...
Yeah, but I didn't know like where in the timeline in between 3 and 4 it was.
Yeah.
Because it could have like if it was like more to the beginning of the timeline in between 3 and 4, they could have possibly survived, but I didn't know it was like right there,
Yeah.
and then it's like right into episode 4. So that
Exactly.
was, so that's why they needed to be ended.
Yeah. And I think that's cool, because like even some of the darker Star Wars movies like Revenge of the Sith and Empire Strikes Back, like there's always kind of this nice ending where you know that good will prevail at some point, and you get that payoff in A New Hope, but not in this movie. All the characters that you're rooting for die. Like it's kind of a bleak ending, but it was really realistic and it really kind of fit with the story. And I think one of my fears was that, you know, Disney was going to be scared to make such a bleak ending, but they weren't. They went for it, and I think it really paid off.
Mm-hmm.
We're introduced to a lot of new planets and worlds in this movie, and I thought they were really, really cool. I really liked Jeddah and how it was kind of like this allegory for Jerusalem. It was like this religious center of spiritual activity, and Scarif was like really beautiful. It was nice to see like kind of a beach paradise type planet. I know we technically get to see Kashyyyk in Revenge of the Sith, but like it was mostly CG anyways, so not a lot of the scenery there.
And just to speak to that, it just also establishes how powerful the Empire actually is. How they have bases, like different type of bases. There's a research base, there's a labor camp base, there's ones that they occupy moons. So it just shows how far that the Empire has actually come in their conquest.
Yeah, they've conquered so many like diverse different planets, and they're not just like this military entity. They have archives, for example, which is where the...
It's very political too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they still need to answer to the Senate, and the Senate, when blowing up Jeddah's...
Mm-hmm.
Was it Jeddah's the planet, or is Jeddah the city?
There was Jeddah City, which they blew up, and then there was Jeddah the planet.
Planet? Okay, yeah. So when they blow that up, they have to explain themselves to the Senate on why they did that. So there's still a lot of politics in this, and that maneuvering around Krennic, yeah, from Tarkin is also another way. And then there's also a back and forth where Krennic goes to Darth Vader to try to get to the Emperor, but there's a lot of maneuvering for the politics in this as well, which I think weakened the Empire, which sets up the rebels to allow them to blow up the Death Star in A New Hope.
Yeah, that's a good point. You really get a sense of scale of the Empire, that it's so big, but even then it shows where its weaknesses are. Like, it's so big, and there's so many bureaucracies and so many like leaders in charge of it in different parts of the galaxy, that you really feel like this is the Empire. I think in the original trilogy you don't really get a sense of that, because you're so focused on Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Princess Leia moving through the story, that you don't really get a sense of why this is the force to be reckoned with. But Rogue One really sets up how big the Empire is.
Alright, so K2SO, what do you have to say about him?
I love K2SO.
Everybody loves K2SO.
I think he was the right amount of humor, but he was also useful. Like, he wasn't just like this wisecracking
I know, it wasn't just comic relief.
Yeah.
It was also practicality.
Yeah, like he's basically an enforcer droid for the Empire that gets repurposed by the rebels. So that pays off in a bunch of ways, especially when they have to kind of like hide and be stealthy and stuff. But he's also just really funny. Like, he makes all these savage comments and like will call people out on their crap sometimes. And I really like that. I actually would go so far to say that I like him better than C-3PO.
I like him much more than C-3PO.
C-3PO is just so like whiny.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's like a germaphobe, and he's all neurotic, and like I feel like C-3PO would not be fun to travel with. Whereas with K2, you could be with him for hours, and he would like pull you away from stupid ideas. Like, he's just so real and he's so funny.
Yeah. All right. So overall, how would you rate this movie, and what are you looking forward to in the future?
So I really love this movie. I do have a few nitpicks, so it's not perfect, but it's pretty damn close. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. That's like an A plus probably, so like a 90%. And I'm really excited for these. Well, obviously I'm excited for the future of Star Wars, but I'm excited for these anthology movies that they're doing. This was kind of the first one that didn't take place in that main Skywalker saga. So I'm really excited to see like what they do, for example, with the Han Solo spin-off movie, which we're getting in a few years. And there's another spin-off coming in 2020. It used to be a Boba Fett something, but now they're kind of debating if they want to do something different. But I'm excited for those movies because I think this one really worked and it fleshes out the universe more and they can just be really interesting. What about you?
Well, I have one more question. So, did you like this one more than Force Awakens,
Ooh.
or did you like this less?
Ooh, that is the question, isn't it? I think on a technical level, I liked this movie more. It felt a lot like a gritty war, World War II type movie. Like I was saying when I first left the theater, like every time someone gets shot or blown up in this movie, it looks painful as opposed to just being like a cartoony type violence. And the directing style was different, but I think it really fit the tone that they were going for this movie. So I like that more than I like Force Awakens. However, Episode 7 has a little bit more character richness. Like the characters in that movie are developed really well and they're really unique and different. And some of the characters in this movie, though they're really badass, don't really get that same amount of time to like sit with you and kind of develop in your mind. So I think overall I'm going to go with Episode 7, just based on the fact that I think that the character richness was a lot more present. But, I mean, frig, like, Rogue One is definitely up there as one of the better, like, Star Wars movies.
Much better than the prequels.
Oh, God, yeah.
Much better. Yeah.
All three of them put together don't even hold a candle to this. I think I like this movie more than I like Return of the Jedi. I don't think I like it more than Episode 4 or 5. Or 7, but it's definitely like upper tier for me.
So I'm most excited for the in-between of 3 and 4. I would love them to just expand more into this. Also explaining, so like that Han Solo movie, that would be really interesting too. But even if they did movies in between current episodes, like episode 4 and 5, or 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Because Luke Skywalker comes back in 6 as like a full-blown Jedi Master.
Yeah.
Or even an episode in between 6 and 7, where like Luke Skywalker's gone missing. What happened?
Yeah.
Where did he just vanish right after his like celebration on Endor?
Yeah.
But so how did he get there? He's older now too. In episode 7, he has like gray hair, gray beard, and everything. So something definitely happened in between 6 and 7. So that would be cool too. If the Han Solo movie's actually placed in between that would also be cool, just to see how all those characters got to where they are now.
Yeah, and the thing about the Han Solo movie too is that if they want to do like an origin for him, then they could place it between 3 and 4, but they could make it right after the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire, so that we get even more of a filling between 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Because as we said, Rogue One is very much just pre-Episode 4.
Like right there.
Yeah, but we still have that right after Episode 3, where there's a lot of like room to kind of play with what's going on. I mean, we have Rebels, of course, but that can only, of course, deal with so much. But yeah, I'm excited.
All right, I'm also excited for the future. So that's about it for the podcast. We're actually going to go see Assassin's Creed right now.
That might be podcast worthy based on what some of the reviews are saying.
I saw some of the reviews are just terrible. They're just like worst movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We may or may not do a podcast on it. We had some time off, so we're doing the podcast now. So happy holidays and happy new year, and thanks for listening. Also, spoilers alert. Wow, this is the worst.
Oh god.
Right at the end of
Okay.
the thing. Maybe do an intro after
Sure,
spoilers
sure.
alert, and then that's it. All right, thanks for listening.